What is going on, everybody? In the last 11 years, I've owned and been the caretaker of 6 different RVs. I've had everything from a travel trailer, a fifth wheel, a Class C, a Class A, and today I've been kind of dreaming a little bit, hanging out here at the Motor Coach store, and wanted to make a video telling you guys all of the biggest differences that I noticed in between all of those RVs. Today I'm going to share a ton of information, all of the likes and dislikes I've had of owning all of these different RVs. Before we get started though, a huge thanks to RV SnapPad for sponsoring today's video. RV SnapPad is the world's only permanent jack pad. If you own a fifth wheel, motorhome, travel trailer, or truck camper, this is definitely a product you want to check out. Snap pads are made to snap into your levelers or stabilizer system and stay there for good. With snap pads installed, your RV will benefit from increased stability and protection for each landing foot. No more sinking into soft surfaces, and you don't have to climb under your rig to retrieve your jack pads either. We've partnered with SnapPad to offer our viewers a special discount on a set of snap pads. Simply click the link in the description below, submit your RV info, and get an instant snap pad recommendation for your rig. Then you can use the coupon code in the description below for a 10% discount. RV snap pads are made in the USA and give a special thanks to all of the veterans and first responders. Those of you that have followed the channel for a long time know that I got my start detailing RVs. My first RV was an Airstream travel trailer. That was a 1990 Airstream Excella. The biggest advantages to having a travel trailer are gonna be the height. It's gonna be a lower profile, so you don't have to worry as much about tree branches. Now, the biggest sacrifices are you're not gonna have as much storage, you're not gonna have as much living space as you are in the larger RVs, but they're very easy to tow. I could tow it with a 3/4 ton cargo van. It worked out really well for me. But as my detail business was growing and I needed more living quarters, because I kept going up to South Dakota in the summertime, and I'd have a bunch of my buddies from Arizona come help detail coaches, and we needed a bunch of beds to sleep in. So I ended up buying a 2010 KZ Inferno. It was a 44-foot toy hauler. It had 2 stackable beds in the back, a loft, a queen size bed. I think you could sleep like 10 people in that coach. It had a bath and a half, which was a cool option and very rare back in that era. Now, there's some big pluses and minuses to owning a fifth wheel. The big pluses are gonna be the cost and the living space. You can get a fairly new rig with a ton of living space for not a lot of money, but you are gonna have to spend a lot of money on a big truck, 2,500 or 3,500, maybe even a dually, to be able to tow that vehicle. But one of the big plus sides is separating your house from your motorhome. Now, I'm going to talk more about Class A's in a moment, but one of the big disadvantages to a Class A motorhome is if you have something go wrong with the chassis on something like this, and you're living in the coach and you have all of your stuff in it, it can create a very difficult time. Where if you have a problem with your chassis on your truck, you can have your fifth wheel parked in an RV resort and you could drop your truck off and get a rental car or something like that. So you don't have to give up your housing when you have a chassis problem. One of the big disadvantages of having the fifth wheel is if you're gonna get a higher end fifth wheel, like they make like the New Horizons fifth wheels, the Mobile Suites, the Luxes. When you get into those more expensive fifth wheels, you're gonna need a really big, probably a dual axle truck to be able to tow those. So if you're going out to dinner or going to the grocery store, having that huge truck isn't always, always the best. So, but for long-term living, if you're not traveling a lot of miles a year and you just want a nice house that you can set at an RV park, a fifth wheel is definitely the way to go. And you still have a lot of basement storage. When you get into the travel trailers, usually you lose a lot of that basement storage and you lose a lot of headroom. The fifth wheels are usually a lot taller. After I had that fifth wheel, I had a family member that purchased a 2016 Winnebago Brave, and I actually lived in that coach for a while. I lived in the fifth wheel, the Airstream, and the Winnebago Brave. I full-timed in those for probably 4 or 5 years between the 3 of those. Winnebago Brave was a Class A gas on the Ford F-53 chassis. One of my first videos, actually, my third or fourth video, was a review on that coach. So I'll leave that in the description below. And if you go back and watch some of my earlier videos, you'll see some of my old detail times in those videos. But the Ford F-53 definitely doesn't drive like a diesel pusher. You definitely don't have the power going through the mountains. You would get kind of pushed around by a semi-truck, but just going back and forth, you know, I would set that coach at an RV park for a long period of time. So it worked out really well for me. The livability worked out really well. You're on a higher chassis, so you're gonna have more bay storage than you do in the trailers or the fifth wheels. If you spin around those seats up front, you can gain that living area, but you are usually losing quite a bit of living area where the steering wheel is and the dashboard and all of that. One of the biggest advantages of going from the trailer to the Class A is when you're traveling, you've got your bathroom, your refrigerator all in the coach, so you don't ever have to get out of the vehicle to access your house stuff. I did really like that Winnebago Brave. The biggest advantage to that coach was the price point and what you get, but the biggest disadvantage was the drivability of it. So after using the Winnebago Brave for a couple years and being the caretaker of that coach, I bought a Tiffin Phaeton, and that was right around the time that I was starting this channel. I think I might have even started this channel before I bought that Tiffin Phaeton. So going from the 2016 Winnebago Brave to the 08 Tiffin Phaeton, and that was a 42-foot Tiffin Phaeton, so much larger than the Winnebago Brave that I had been using. So the big advantages for me on that was it had the 10,000-pound towing hitch. It was a much larger unit. Driving that, going from that Winnebago to the Tiffin Phaeton, I always joked it was like going from a smart car to a Cadillac because it was so much more comfortable. Now, the maintenance went up when I had that. There was more stuff going on, and it was a little bit older coach. So it was in that same price point of the Winnebago Brave, but I was going back significantly, so the interior was more dated, and it just required more maintenance. It had more stuff breaking just because it was a 12-year-old coach as opposed to pretty much a brand new coach. When I was using the Winnebago Brave, it was only a year or two old. So having all those extra miles on it, just, you know, stuff breaks in these coaches as they get older. It's not if, it's when. And then the other big thing was the tire cost. Going to a diesel pusher, the tires were a lot more expensive, but it was just a much, like I said, going from like a smart car to a Cadillac, the livability of it, you know, having a much bigger rig. It was a quad slide rig. I could load up the bays. I could flat tow my Sprinter van behind it with that 10,000-pound towing capacity. Being by myself in a Class A motorhome, it seemed like it was a lot more than I needed, and I was starting to travel more and put more miles down, and I thought it would be a good idea to trade in the Tiffin Phaeton for a leisure travel van. And I found a deal on that leisure travel van, was able to conveniently trade in my Tiffin Phaeton, and of course it costs a lot of money every time you make a trade-in, especially when you're dealing with the big dealerships, but that's part of it. These are luxury toys, so this is an investment in your lifestyle. If you're looking to make money, go invest in real estate or the stock market or something like that, but this is all about lifestyle, investing in one of these. So the biggest thing when I went from the Tiffin Phaeton to the leisure travel van, obviously I didn't have the big towing capacity, but the biggest thing that I noticed was the size of the tanks. Not only the fuel tank in that Sprinter van was only about 25 gallons, where the Tiffin Phaeton had a 100-gallon diesel fuel tank. So even though the leisure travel van got a lot better mileage than the Tiffin Phaeton, I was having to stop more often for fuel, and then the holding tanks to take a shower. Like literally I would take a couple of showers, then have to dump my tanks, and in that Tiffin Phaeton I could probably go a week dry camping and was totally good. So I had a lot of fun with the leisure travel van, but making all these YouTube videos, being around all these cool coaches, I got the itch and ended up buying that Newell coach that a lot of you have seen. And unfortunately that didn't work out as well as I would have liked, but a lot to be thankful for, and we're moving forward and trying to figure out what the best RV is. So I'm reflecting on all of this information and reflecting on the past to figure out what the best machine moving forward is going to be. So I compare the Newell coach a lot to that Tiffin Phaeton because they're both Class A diesel pushers. The Newell coach had the 200-gallon diesel fuel carrying capacity where the Tiffin only had 100 gallons. That was what I really liked, is I could fill up 200 gallons of fuel, just drive for a long time. Same thing with the holding tanks. I think there was like 140 fresh and 140 waste tank, so you could take a lot more showers without having to dump the tanks and really kind of be off grid in that coach. You had the 20 kW generator that could run those AC units, and the way that Newell was built and the way it drove, I would say, you know, if going from the gas coach to the Tiffin was like going from a smart car to a Cadillac, going from the Tiffin to the Newell coach was like going from a Cadillac to a Rolls Royce. I mean, it was top shelf. Now there was even more complexity with that, and that being a 20-year-old coach, you know, we only had it for so long, and didn't get to learn that coach as much as I would have liked. But that's another point that I think of, is every coach, every time you buy a new coach, you have to learn that coach. You're going to be the caretaker of that coach. So every coach I had, it wasn't until, you know, 3 to 6 months to a year of being in that coach and using it that you start to really notice all the differences, and you really learn a lot about the coach and what works best for you. What's your lifestyle? What's important to you? So everyone says, what's the best RV to buy? Well, that's a loaded question because everybody has different needs and different wants and different budgets as well. But even if you have an unlimited budget, doesn't mean a $2 million Newell coach is the best coach for you. It may be a leisure travel van, or even a Class B like a Airstream Interstate, or maybe a towable rig. I've advised people in all different ways depending on their situation, and I try to respond to all the messages that you guys send me. I appreciate all of the support. It's impossible for me to get back to everybody, but if you do want to schedule a consult call with me, I can give you my undivided attention, assess your situation, and give you my, you know, unbiased advice of what's the best RV for you. You can schedule a consult call on my website, rvingwithandrewsteele.com. I'll leave a link to that in the description below, and we can go over your situation and what's the best coach for you. So I wanted to make this video today just kind of reflecting on all the motorhomes that I've owned in the past. And I've flipped a couple other ones. Like I owned that Beaver coach for like a day and just resold it and got in and got out before having to do any service work or spend any money on it. So that's a big thing too, is when you're going to own one of these, I think one of the most important parts of it is knowing who the service center is going to be that's going to take care of this coach. So I greatly appreciate all of you that support the channel and like these videos and subscribe to the channel. I hope you're all having a great day. Thanks again.